Hello and welcome to the Talk Football podcast. This is our second ever live broadcast. This is episode 1 of season 3. And if you ever look to my side here, look who's back. Paul's back. Welcome back to the pod, Paul.
Thank you very much for having me.
We haven't had Paul on for a while, so what better way to kick off season 3 than by having yourself come back?
Couldn't agree more.
Well, I think it's fair to say it's been an eventful start to the new Premier League season. A couple of surprise results at the start, most notably Brentford smashing Man U 4-0, which I took most pleasure at, that's for sure. But not a great start for Liverpool. They didn't really start too well.
Until today.
We'll come on to that in a bit. But yeah, what's your thoughts on Spurs' starts of the season so far?
I think I'm taking it on the half-full side of things. So, Southampton, they played well. Went to your boys and got absolutely played off the park, but didn't lose. Yeah. And in previous seasons, we'd have lost that 2-3, maybe 4.
We're coming on to that later.
Sent off.
Battle of the Bridge 2.
Yeah, exactly. And then didn't play very well against Wolves, but managed to get the point. So we're undefeated, 7 points from 9. And we haven't hit top form yet. Sonny has barely started. Kane started scoring in August, which is rare. So I'm just
that is very rare.
Half full with it. Really, I think that's a positive sign.
Sonny's a strange one for me. I thought his performances have been a little bit in and out.
I think Son's an example of how we're going to see a really strange season. In that, not only is he, Son's Kane for South Korea, when you think about it, like he's a big man, he has all the pressure over there, he's barely had a break, and then we've got this World Cup coming up, and I think probably it's not who are the best teams with this season, who are the best players. It's more about who knows how to kind of manage their body and manage fatigue, and almost which teams don't go very far in the World Cup, and who can manage the disappointment or the elation of how well you do in the World Cup and come back and still be motivated for the second half of the season.
Yeah, so it is definitely a funny season.
I think Son's just starting slowly because he wants to peak in December.
To me, it feels like there's been like so much already. Then we're only on this is what I suppose you would call game week 4. It feels like so much has already happened. Like certain results.
There's so many narratives, narratives, aren't there?
I mean, of course, and we'll talk about transfers in a bit, but I've made a couple of notes, like the Newcastle. I don't know if you watched it, but because obviously time-wise for you out there, the Newcastle and Man City game, 3-3.
Yeah,
I mean, that was incredible. I mean, City letting in quite a few goals. I mean, even today, I mean, at one point they were 2-0 down to Palace. So it's unusual for City to be shipping as many goals as they have. But I suppose perhaps not having that sort of protection of Fernandinho anymore makes him a bit more weaker in midfield.
He didn't really play much last season, did he? He was in another team. He
tended to come in for the important games, the big games. So that's probably a bit of a miss for them. Chelsea starts of the season. It's Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, we've won today, albeit with Conor Gallagher getting sent off after 28 minutes of 2 stupid yellows. And I don't know. I mean, I think that obviously we played well against your boys, which was
amazing. You looked great.
Yeah,
we went into that game thinking we were going to beat you, and
yeah. I remember saying to you, I remember saying we had a conversation on messaging, and I actually thought we'd get smashed. I really did, and I didn't expect us to play that well, given what we'd seen like in the previous game. But I think the same old story for Chelsea though, creating a fair amount of chances, but not being able to put them away. It's just
you haven't got a striker. You haven't actually.
That helps. That does help. I mean, I don't know if we're going to remedy that within the next. I think it's 4.5 days left of the transfer window. So whether or not that's going to get sorted, I don't know. It looks like we're going to get Fofana in. Apparently, that's the money's been agreed on that. And of course, we're chasing Gordon, which is another wide player. So I'm not really quite sure how that works with what we've already got.
As it stands at the moment, do you think you're stronger than you were last season?
No, I don't.
No,
and I think obviously a lot of how we played and how we've been successful under Tuchel is by having a pretty solid defensive base, and I think you can clearly see. I mean, don't get me wrong, Koulibaly I think is a very, very good signing. Thiago, albeit at the age of nearly 38, still a very good player. But because we play that three, I think we lack that real. The thing is just that as a ball carrying centre half, Rudiger was phenomenal, and that he could transition, through the areas of the pitch and bring us out with the ball. And Koulibaly can do that, but not as effectively as Rudiger. And I think obviously that's a massive miss. And I think the depth in our defence doesn't really run deep. Whereas, last season we could afford to play Chalobah and give him minutes as a young player. Because we had Christiansen, we've obviously lost him. I'm quite chuffed that we've obviously kept Dave in his 10th year at Chelsea. I would have been a bit sad to, even though his legs are going a little bit. But the problem we've got at the moment is obviously we've had to play. We've been playing Ruben Loftus-Cheek as a right wing back and bring in.
He did very well against Spurs.
Yeah, he did great, but I think you lose so much not having Reece out there that I think it was quite notable that once some changes were made and Reece went back out onto that right wing back position, particularly against you, that how much more effective he was in terms of being able to control the game from that position. As we see with a lot of fullbacks, they get a lot of the game these days, don't they? A lot of attacks are sort of like
as a wing back.
As a wing back. So for me, having him as part of the back three, I think that limits what we are capable of doing. I think Cucurella's a fantastic signing for us. I really like him, and I'm surprised he's got any hair left after what after Mayo tried to pull it all out.
Stupid hair, then you're going to get it pulled out. So I have no sympathy for him. On Reece James, I think Reece James has got to be England's first choice right back, hasn't he?
Well, yeah. Again, I mean, I think. Well, I mean, one of the games from the early part of the season. Well, not so much the early, but previous weekend. But the Man U Liverpool game. I don't know if you saw that live, but I mean, Rashford and Sancho and that they had. I mean, to be honest, the whole Man U team was at it that day, and they had to be at it given what they'd happened against Brentford and against Brighton. So they had to be at it. And if you can't get up for playing Liverpool as a Man United player, then you probably really shouldn't be in the squad. But they had Trent Alexander-Arnold on toast. They really did.
I mean, his ability is unquestioned, but defensively he's weak, isn't he?
And going forward,
and if you look at that Liverpool team, you have to think, okay, where are you going to attack? Where's their weakness? And everyone's going down his side.
Back post. You get down. You can get down. Or even if you're crossing from your right side of the pitch towards that back post, he switches off. He doesn't track. And the 1-2, I don't know if if you can remember back to it, but the 1-2 that was played where they got in, Alanga played the 1-2 and got in behind him to the cutback for Sancho. He never even made an effort to get back in. Like, make a 10-yard sprint, and you might actually have been in front of the ball to block Sancho from popping it in the corner. And what Van Dijk was doing, I mean, we could see the reaction of James Milner to Van Dijk's defending. I've had a long belief that Van Dijk is a little bit overrated for what he actually is. I think he's had good players alongside. Don't get me wrong, fantastic player, but I think positionally sometimes he can get caught out. And now at the age of 31, I think his legs are going a bit. I think he gets caught out a bit more.
I think that's a bit harsh. I think
maybe
it's just fatigue.
Maybe.
I think it's just, you think the levels that Liverpool team have played in since he's been in that team is exceptional. What other era has there been two teams like Manchester City and Liverpool that are almost unbeatable, and 90 points for 5 seasons or whatever it is?
I can only really think back to sort of like that mid 90s when you had like the Arsenal invincible team that came through, whilst United were still a power, and then them two were going
the
at it for a
difference
few
is though,
seasons.
that Arsenal Invincible team didn't lose, but they drew a lot.
They did draw
So
a
you
lot.
could take points off them.
Yes.
Teams in previous seasons have struggled to take points off of both City and Liverpool, other than Spurs last season.
I mean,
at this point.
I mean,
and
City
that
today,
United team would lose. United would start slowly in the season and then catch up, and they would lose games. They would lose every 6 or 7 games or 8 games or something, but they were still obviously good enough. They never won the title with 90 plus points. Did they? 100 points?
No, they didn't.
So these two teams are just exceptional, and
I mean, the last 3 years has been an incredible level, level. I mean, to breach that gap. I mean, and arguably, probably say Chelsea and Spurs are the closest teams to being, and maybe trying to push towards getting towards that gap, but it's still a long way away. I mean, having said that, I think Liverpool got a massive problem with their midfield, because Thiago can't stay fit, and losing Wijnaldum for the previous season, I think he was a good player for them. Having to at the moment they're having to start a kid in Elliott and a 37-year-old veteran in Milner in midfield because they haven't got the depth. And I think a lot of where Trent's success in terms of what he was able to produce came from having Jordan Henderson playing at an incredible level for 3 years on that right side of that three in midfield, to drop in and give him the protection to allow him to go forward, and they haven't had that.
No, I think that's what I mean. It only takes a drop off of a few percent. So as you say, like Alexander-Arnold's dropped off a few percent, Van Dijk's dropped off a few percent, the midfield's not quite there, so they're not getting the protection because of that. And that Liverpool midfield has always been workmanlike, isn't it? It's a bit like the Spurs midfield.
And then they added a bit of spice on it when they brought in Thiago, phenomenal player. I really do enjoy watching him. But for obviously have him in the team, you need 2 really combative midfielders beside him, which is it's a strange one with Liverpool. I think it'd be incredibly difficult to catch City this year. I think Haaland's hit the ground running. He's picked up a hat-trick today, so he's. I think that signing, I think that really kills the league. I mean, I've had conversations with people and think if Haaland stays fit, I don't really see any other team winning the Premier League.
The only thing with Haaland, though, is he wasn't brought in to win the Premier League. City have won the Premier League 4 of the last 5 times. For me, just like Pep,
it's the cream.
They are judged on the They're judged on the Champions League.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
This Pep, who obviously is a very, very, very good manager, but he hasn't won the Champions League
since Barcelona.
10 years, is it? Nearly 10 years, maybe.
I mean, I think he's coming into, is it his 6th season at City now? I think. Yeah. I think he came a year after Klopp, I think it was.
Yeah.
So
and
then he didn't win it at Munich.
No, so he hasn't won it since Barcelona. So he hasn't won it in 10 years. So for this man who's meant to be the elite manager of hasn't won the main title for the last 10 years. The other interesting thing with Liverpool is I heard the other day that, of course, didn't Borussia Dortmund absolutely blow up in Klopp's 7th season there?
Well, Klopp has got this
really bad.
It's funny you should come on to that, because I was talking to a Liverpool mate, a friend of mine who's a Liverpool fan, about this conspiracy theory thing that's like trotting around about Klopp's 7-year itch. So when he was at Mainz, they got relegated, and in his 7th season he failed to get them back up and took over at Dortmund. Phenomenal at Dortmund, 2 league titles, really, really good.
Yeah, Champions League final, wasn't it?
Final season, 7th season, the season he left them, very nearly got relegated. Very, very. I mean, like hovering, above the press or whatever you call it. Maybe, I don't know. Klopp appears frustrated. I mean, obviously today is going to be a massive shot in the arm. For anyone
got the goal difference off of it, haven't they?
Yeah, obviously at the time that we're recording this and that we're broadcasting live as well, You know, they've won 9-0 today against Bournemouth, but I kind of feel sorry for Bournemouth being on the end of that whacking, but welcome back to the Premier League. Poor old Scotty Parker. But yeah, I mean,
brings you.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, talking to Haaland, I mean, that leads me on to one of the other things I want to talk about is like transfers. Obviously, yourself, your Spurs have signed Richarlison. I think we're probably both expecting him to start tomorrow. I would think.
Yeah, I reckon.
I think you, like you say, maybe
bring
give
back in
something
for the
West Ham.
It's 2 games a week now, isn't it? With the Champions League, and the Champions League is squeezed into 6 or 7 weekends, or six midweeks, but literally pretty much back to back. So
yeah, there's been a lot. I mean, I think it's something like I think with the Isaac deal to Newcastle, I think we've breached. I think it's 900 million that Premier League clubs have spent in this window, which is an unreal amount of money. So it's got to be one of the busiest sort of like transfer windows for big signings I've seen for a while. Obviously,
it just keeps going up and up, doesn't it?
Yourself with Richarlison, I've made a note with a few. Obviously, Jesus to and Jesus and Zinchenko to Arsenal, which I think are 2 very shrewd signings. I haven't double checked the score. I don't know what the score is yet. And the last time I checked the Arsenal score, that it was 1-1 with Fulham.
Yeah, 2-1. I think
2-1 now. 2-1. Okay. So Arsenal are flying off. They're off to a flyer. Brighton, Brighton after today was sitting on 10 points, just behind City. And that's a phenomenal start for them. And they haven't really done much business at all. It's pretty much the same squad. In fact, they're trimming the squad off. Yeah, obviously lost Cucurella to us. Great signing. People will talk about the money. Basuma to yourself, which I like Basuma.
To Everton. Yeah.
Mopé to Everton. Yeah, Mopé to Everton. And I know he was a bit in and out of the team, but that's still a player that's played regularly in the Premier League for Brighton for a few years. So, and obviously we've ourselves, like I say, Cucurella, brought in Sterling. We've got Gallagher back on loan, so I kind of see that almost like a new signing, albeit he got sent off today, but he's going to get minutes because Kante's going to be out for about another 4 or 5 weeks. So, but I want to get your thoughts on this. As Nottingham Forest, to my knowledge so far, have signed 16 players. That's literally a squad.
You can see why they've done it, but I can't imagine it's going to work.
No,
you look at Bournemouth losing 9-0 today.
Yeah,
and the problem is when you come up from the Championship, you're just so far behind, aren't you? You don't really stand a chance. You're expected to go straight back down. I reckon all 3 teams will go straight back down.
I think it's a high possibility.
So I think you can
Forest
see why
done
Forest have done it. And didn't Forest have loads of loans in the Championship as well? So it was
they had a few.
They had a massive.
Yeah, squad. I mean, obviously Jed Spence, who you guys have bought, he hadn't kicked a ball yet for you, though, has he? I don't think.
No, I think he's going to make him earn it. He hasn't been on the bench for the last couple of games.
Yeah. So I like him though. He's a good player. From what I saw of him at Forest in their promotion season, I quite like him. I think he'd be a good signing.
He did one in the FA Cup, didn't he? And he played against Spurs the season before and did really well. But Conte's going to make him earn it. And we've got 4 right backs, I think, at the moment, 4 right wing backs. And he's 4th choice, so he's going to have to.
Makes you wonder, though, like what goes. I mean, obviously, as a player, you back yourself, don't you, to go to a club and get in a team. If a team is playing a fairly significant, transfer fee for you, you think that you're probably gonna.
He'll get a chance second. I reckon he'll get a chance second half of the season after the World Cup. Him and Sessegnon used to play together as kids. I think they were both in the Fulham Academy as well. So I think that'll help him settle in, and the 2 of them going up and down the wings.
One of your ex-players has been linked with a free transfer to Forest. I don't know if you've seen it, Serge Aurier.
Well, I'd say
I quite liked him.
Well, the irony of Serge is that he was a liability, but I would argue that he's better than all 4 of the right wing backs we've currently got at the club. So we did the right thing to get rid of him. We just haven't replaced him.
Did you notice what I've got in the background there as well?
Yeah, I saw the shirt.
Because obviously I've recently moved, and of course, like, you know, you're going through old stuff and all that, and I found a big bag of the whole collection of these football shirts. So I thought I'd just dig a few out and throw a couple back there as a reminder.
I'll put mine behind me next time.
As a reminder of down the years, the pain and hurt.
Well, I'm the one with the pain and hurt. You're the one with the glory.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, transfers. I mean, if you could, like, for Spurs, if you could maybe sign another one or two, what would you be, if you was Conte? What would you be thinking?
The general consensus from Spurs' perspective is we need one more centre half, particularly as it looks like Tanganga's probably going to go out on loan over to AC Milan.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player.
He's a good player, and then, of course,
he just can't.
Tomori's out there as well, so you know.
He needs a season where he's first choice and he plays all the time, and then so I hope it's a loan without an option to buy, because I've always liked him. He's a good defender, and I like the concept of, you know, the academy coming through. So you've got
homegrown player,
Skip, and you've got Tanganga. You know, those players that the club means something to. But for me, it's probably a creative midfielder. I don't understand at all with Spurs why we didn't really push the boat out to get Eriksen, unless we just didn't want to pay his wages. Maybe he was being too greedy. I don't know.
I know. I mean, he's obviously on a lot there at United. I mean, you would think common sense though, on a player that's obviously clearly familiar with the club, comfortable with the Premier League and the manager. Yeah. You know,
the only reason I can think of, and I've no idea if this is true, and I haven't heard it anywhere, but I can only assume that because of how Conte trains the team, and with what happened with Eriksen in his heart, Conte's a bit concerned of his fitness, and you know, because if it was Italy, obviously he couldn't play in Italy because they won't allow.
They don't allow ICDs in the league,
and maybe Conte believes that you know, he shouldn't be allowed to play football, and he's worried if he trains him too hard. But we definitely need someone like that. You know,
someone who can open the game out.
We struggle to unpick teams.
There's not a lot of them around.
No, but we struggled even under Poch. We struggled when teams just sat and just trying to break them down. And you know, talking about Liverpool's workman-like midfield, our midfield, the four guys we've got are all really good four players that. Playing Liverpool, playing Chelsea, playing City are perfect. You know, Basuma, Skip, Højbjerg, Bentancur, but none of them can pick that pass. And I think when last season we played really well when we moved Ali and then Ndombele. It's one of Conte's first games, but we went with a 3 in midfield instead of a 2, and we had like Ndombele and Ali with a little bit of.
But gives them, I suppose, gave them a bit more freedom, as well.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Ndombele, like moving on? I feel it because he showed glimpses of what he potentially could be. I think that's a bit of a shame, that, isn't it?
I think at the time I was desperate to get him because he looked great in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And there was talk that City and other teams wanted him, but when you actually look back, no one pushed for him. We were the only ones that pushed.
Yeah.
And I think we were the only ones that pushed because the other teams could tell from his personality that he just didn't have the commitment. He didn't have the enthusiasm. We put him on same wages as Kane, so he was on like 200 grand a week.
Yeah.
He'd gone from Lille, where he was on whatever he was on, in football terms, next to nothing, to a massive amount of money. And he just didn't have the desire. He didn't have the commitment to do it.
Yeah.
No.
I think, mate, and especially at that time, where obviously, and when you had obviously Jose, because he was there under Jose, wasn't he? Jose demands a lot out of a player.
Poch signed him because it was straight after the Champions League. It was when we hadn't had any signings for like 2-3 seasons, and so Poch signed him and said he's going to take me a year to sort him out. And of course, Poch was gone in a couple of months.
Yeah,
and then
Jose comes in.
He didn't have the desire to kick on, and he won't. He'll go on loan to Napoli, but they're not going to. They're not going to take his wages, so it would be up to Spurs he won't sign there. He'll be one of them players who just goes out on loan
constantly on loan.
Contract.
Yeah,
his contract's worth something like ridiculous. It's like a $60 million contract in wages over 6 years or something. So
it's bizarre.
And it's easy to sit here and be critical of him, but I don't know what you or I would do if we were in the same boat. You know, whatever you do, doesn't matter how you perform,
you're going to be getting paid back.
200 grand a week comes in your bank account.
It depends on what your motivations in the game are. I mean, you've got some players that are just completely and utterly obsessed and motivated by playing and training and being involved in that aspect of it. And then you've got players who are quite happily sit on the bench and pocket, you know, XXX amount of money.
I think that's when you look at it, and those guys that have got the drive, you have to admire them, because, you know, the moment Ndombele signed that contract, he was set for life.
Yeah.
You know, like,
well, we see it at Arsenal with Aubameyang. You know, I mean, they signed him and he was on a good wage, and then of course they get him to sign the contract extension, and it was like someone had literally switched him off.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, well, I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of the All or Nothing Arsenal.
I haven't. I'd like to see the one just before the second North London derby. Well, actually, I'd like to see the conversations behind when they bottled it in January, when they decided that they'd sell their players and loan their players out.
I'm just getting onto the episodes. Like, so I've done the episodes where they've been releasing them in like batches of 4. So I've done the 8 episodes. So I've seen the bit obviously where they made the decision to take the captaincy away from Aubameyang, and then where he then basically gets released from his contract. It was far cheaper to try, and no one was going to pay you know, a transfer fee for him because of the wages and all that would have been on top. So he ends up going on a free, obviously, to Barcelona. And it's really it was quite fascinating the way it all. I love those documentaries. I love the way that you get to see all the shenanigans that go on in the background. I mean, Spurs, I went back and watched the Spurs one again recently before the Arsenal one came out, and going back and there's been a lot of clips this week, because obviously one of your other former players, Dele Alli, of course, has left Everton and joined Besiktas on loan. And I went back and watched it as part, because there was a clip going around with Jose Mourinho, which is getting on for like what, 2-3 years now.
2019, that would have been.
Yeah, so that's like 3 years when he sat. Yeah, and he had Dele sat in the office, and he's saying, "You need to demand more of you." And he's saying, "I'm 56. Yesterday I was 21. Don't look back with regret at what you could have been." And it's almost like, you know, like Jose had this crystal ball about this kid's career, where it was going to go. I think it's a massive shame.
I will defend Ali slightly in 2 points. So firstly, Spurs didn't sign the player for 3 summers, which meant that Ali was playing up front almost as a second striker behind Kane.
Yeah,
and then
played a lot of games.
We had to move him into midfield, so we changed his position, which meant, I mean, if you look at his touch map, you know, how many times I remember us having. He never touched it. He never touched the ball. Like he would only score or assist. He was always, you know, making runs off the ball. And then all of a sudden we moved him into central midfield, and he started taking too many touches.
And I think I remember we actually spoke about this right away back in season 1 when we did the actual Spurs focused episode, and we spoke about Ali and where they tried to make him become a footballer, when what he was good at was making late runs into the box and getting, like getting the goals. So I think I don't know. It's not all him.
But the problem was, we didn't do it for him. We didn't do it to make him a better player. We did it because we weren't signing players,
and it's what you required.
So the team needed it, You know? And so the problem, and then to that, alongside the fact that almost happened, that coincided with his position as like I don't know what you call him, a ghost number 9, a second striker.
Yeah,
it disappeared from the game. You know, just completely disappeared. Yeah. So Spurs stopped playing it. But yeah, we got Jose in. Obviously, everyone had to work hard off the ball, etc., and do stuff. And then no other teams were playing it, so the position had completely gone.
Yeah.
So almost like the game moved on around him, and he wasn't able to adapt.
Stagnated.
And then I think on top of that, obviously, then you've got all the money, you've got and he had quite a difficult upbringing, I think, and the motivation went. And but he's too good.
You could just see
he's
it.
Too good a player to be where he is. Far too good a player.
You can just see him completely like falling out of love with football, and almost an unfolding. And I really hope that the move to Everton was going to pan out for him. But you kind of just knew, because while Everton are struggling, and when a team's struggling, going into a team that's struggling as a player that's struggling, invariably it doesn't work.
But you would have hoped, or you would have thought that, you know, if there was a player of modern time that you could compare Ali to style-wise, it would be Lampard. You know, arriving late in the box.
Arriving late in the box, yeah.
So you would have, and
if there was if that, he's probably looked at it and thought, listen, I'm getting a guy that could potentially be, if he could get back to almost being in that sort of just below maybe that sort of like world-class bracket of a player, which is where he was. I mean, you go back and look at some of the goals, and I watched the montage of some of the goals that he'd scored. I mean, he loved scoring against Chelsea. We hated playing against Dele Alli. He really did. I mean, it was a game, I can't remember what the final score was, but he came up at the back post with two ridiculous headers from Christian, ironically, from the Christian Eriksen crosses. Which is what you say about opening teams up and having that kind of player.
He's too good. He's too good for Betticast, and hopefully
I think so.
He'll come back.
Yeah, I think it's a loan with an option to buy. I'm not sure. I'd have to have a look.
If you think if Spurs would have sold him for season, you know, there was talk of 150 million for him.
There was, yeah.
And
I mean, I know he was being linked with the likes of United and around at those sort of times when that sort of money was being talked about as well.
And sometimes it shows that maybe it's best to sell the players when they're at their peak, because at 150 million, we could have bought 3 or 4 different players, and he would have moved on, and the team whoever paid 150 million for him would have based their team around him, etc. And maybe it would have been better for him, and it would have been better for us. But you get in that point where you don't want to sell because it makes you look like you're a selling club and you're dismantling the team. But you know, again, Liverpool and Coutinho, you know, the success of Liverpool now was the sale of Coutinho, wasn't it?
It funded Van Dijk
and Alisson and all the others, you know. So maybe if we'd have done that, a bit more planning, sell Dele for 150 million and bring players in, we might have that, you know, trophy.
I have to say, I mean, there's one player I love it. I love the song about him, and I like him as a player as well, and that's Kulusevski. I liked him. I mean, I'm a Juve fan, so I was a bit sort of like gutted that he'd left Juve. And I know there's obviously an option to buy at the end of the 18-month loan. I think Spurs would be mad if they don't take that option up, because obviously Juve would have him back like that. But I like him.
We could have bought him. We could have paid for him in the summer at a cheaper rate, but because they wanted to like spend money this summer on other players, the decision was, we'll just pay more for you. We know it's a fixed cost. We know we got to do it, but now's the time to invest in the rest of the squad. But he's a funny one, because he came on in his first game and he looked like he couldn't run. I must have been unfit. I mean, he's obviously not the quickest player.
No,
but he's got it in the head, and he obviously didn't know where the other guys, the other players played, and all amongst the fans, it was like, God, this guy's too slow. He's like a cart horse. He's rubbish, isn't it? And then almost it's
another Lamella.
So well, and then he's all, then he's got his own song within another week, and he's like, one of what we now claim is one of the best front threes in the country.
Well, yeah, I mean, like on paper, it's difficult. Well, I mean, not even just on paper. I mean, just in general, it is difficult to look beyond that front three, and then obviously supplementing that with Richarlison, and obviously Perisic, who can play in multiple positions, play anywhere across the front line, wing back, wherever. I mean, that's a tidy signing.
A good signing. Yeah, his ability to cross a ball.
Yeah,
shown in the Chelsea game with both feet.
Yeah, just experience and class, and also Champions League know-how as well, because obviously, pipping Arsenal to the champion. Well, you must have really loved that one. Pipping Arsenal to the Champions League spot was, you have to have that kind of depth and quality in the squad if you're going to get out of the group and go beyond. To be honest, actually, really poor of me, poor planning. I haven't actually got all the Champions League groups in front of me, so I don't know who you got.
Do you know why I reckon that you haven't done that? Because the group stage is almost a bit of a non-event, isn't it? If we're honest. Like,
normally, I'm really excited about it.
You know who's going to get through.
Yeah, I know that obviously you've got that group of death with like all the big teams in. Well, maybe we'll have to come back and revisit that and do like a Champions League.
They always say there's a group of death, but in reality, like Barcelona aren't the Barcelona were before. Inter Milan aren't the Inter Milan of Mourinho or Conte. So it's not really a group of death. It's just big clubs.
Well, that's all. Yeah, I mean, we have given them Lukaku back for pretty much free.
Yeah, but they're not the Inter Milan that of the Conte era, and let alone the team that won the treble. So,
do you think that there's any team like, arguably, say, from that sort of like top 6 pack that could potentially, other than maybe Arsenal, that could potentially break into the top 4? I mean, I've tipped Newcastle to finish in the top 6.
Well, Newcastle, if you take the
solid signings, mate, it's calendar year.
They're top of the league, aren't they?
They're phenomenal. They're there or thereabouts, yeah.
No, they are top. They're top on points. Yeah.
I mean, I think Eddie Howe didn't get a win in his first. I think it was first 3 games, and then they just went on a ridiculous run. They had the odd. I think it was a case where they weren't drawing much. It was they were getting a lot of wins, punctuated by the odd defeat, so they weren't dropping many points at all. I think I like what they've done. I think the new owners have obviously clearly listened. I think they got Dan Ashcroft in there from, I'm sure that's his name, might have got it wrong, apologies, Toon fans if I have, but they got him in there as a football director, and obviously Eddie Howe has a massive say in terms of player recruitment as well. I think Newcastle are dangerously building towards a top 4 challenge.
I agree with you. I think the weakness in the Newcastle system is that even Eddie Howe knew that in effect he was a long-term caretaker manager.
Well, there's that.
The problem with Newcastle, the problem for Newcastle will be if they lose 3 games in a row.
Yeah,
and then
would the temptation there to then start going, all right, we need a superstar manager.
Yeah,
that don't always work though.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. I think I've always liked Eddie Howe, and if you go back to maybe sort of like 2 or 3 years before he left Bournemouth, he was being touted for all the big jobs. He was seen as very much the next big forward-thinking coach. I think if you look at a modern day equivalent, probably Potter sits in that bracket now.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's how long you stay at a club. If you can, it's like almost like the Kirbishley thing. That if you're up there, you've taken a club where you can go. You need to be ambitious enough now to say, I'm going to go. I suppose another coach you can maybe throw into that bracket again is Brendan Rodgers as well, because I mean Leicester are having a fire sale, and God knows where they're going with their season. I think
I think his reputation survives because of what he did at Liverpool before and because of what he's done at Celtic. So he's managed big clubs, hasn't he? So people know he can go into a big club if needed. I
don't think any manager's immune with a run of results of getting the boot. And I wouldn't be surprised, because his demeanour, the way he talks in the press conferences and at the moment about players going and I've got no control, I've got no say over what happens with the players. The club will make that decision. That's, to me, he's got a look on his face as if he's almost resigned to the fact that either they're going to go down or he's going to get the chop. I don't know. I've got a funny feeling about that.
I think he's.
I think everyone.
Excuses. He's getting his excuses in early. Which is
I think hands down, start of the season, everyone had Frank Lampard as the first manager to be sacked, possibly fairly closely followed maybe by Ten Hag, despite the fact that he'd signed a massive contract and just taken over. But I don't know. I got a funny feeling that Rodgers is not too long. Bearing in mind, they probably should have got a result today. Down, playing against us down to 10 men, we weren't playing particularly well. Jamie Vardy, he's 35 now, clean through on goal.
Yeah.
He's not the striker he was. They've haven't got nothing. I mean, I went to the pre-season game, the start of the season, where Leicester played Derby, and they'd split the squad. So you had like half the squad went and played Preston, half the squad stayed back and played Derby. And then it's pretty mean, like Soyuncu, Pratt, Castagna, Tillmans, who for me never looked a £40 million player. That was for sure. Watching him up close and personal, I was struggling to see what all the fuss was about. And then they had Daka and Iniacho up front, which is, what's there. That's what's there to replace Vardy. Because Vardy can't play every game, not at his age. I think Leicester are in a bit of trouble, which leads me nicely onto predictions. So you've already just heard me just say I'm thinking Newcastle top 6. I think the top 2, whichever order you put them around in, picks itself. I think you probably agree.
Do you not think Liverpool's start has given Tottenham and Chelsea the opportunity to try and make second?
I don't know. If you think that Liverpool last season were 13 points behind Man City and then took it to the last day of the season, historically, they come good in the... Obviously, like you said earlier at the start of the pod, the World Cup could throw that completely open. We don't know how anything's going to go with that. But no, I still, because you're talking like a 20-point makeup over,
I'm hopeful that their start gives Spurs a chance, but I would have thought that you guys have got a chance as well of being second, because they can't afford any slip-ups now, can they? They just can't afford to.
No, not.
I mean, they could go on a run and win City, 20 games in a row.
Not to City, but a couple of draws don't really bridge a 20-point gap to where we are.
Well,
I think we finished 18 points behind them, behind those two last season. I can't remember what you were, but I don't think it was that much of a difference, was it?
In the end, no, I can't remember the exact points. It was about 20. Yeah. But I predicted already.
Yeah, I predicted Arsenal would come flying out the traps with the signings that they'd made. I predicted that they would really, first half of the season, maybe like the first third, that they would be absolutely flying and buzzing. But they've got no depth to their squad. So if you take Jesus out of it, Lacazette's now gone. Literally, Jesus is their only out and out number 9 forward. And other than that, they'd be scratching around looking at, I don't know, false 9 sort of thing to get them through. So I think Newcastle would finish in the top 6. 1 or 2 more signings, I think that they might get a little bit closer to us.
Yeah, okay. I mean, if we assume the top 2 are the top 2,
yeah.
I went early before all the signings to you, didn't I? And said I fancy Spurs to finish third, because you finished the season quite
poorly,
and we were on form. And I thought with a few signings and
we're a bit indifferent. I think we need these signings to go through. Obviously, we're in for Fofana. Anthony Gordon might get done, might not get done. And obviously, we're going to need, like you said earlier, we'll need a striker. Newcastle went out and broke their transfer record yesterday in signing Alexander Isak from Sociedad. I know it's a lot of money, but he's a good player. I've seen a fair bit of him. People will quote stats, and he only scored 6 goals last season, but the previous season he scored 17. Last season, Sociedad lost quite a few players and they were struggling, so it was a struggling team, and yet he still managed to get a few assists and get some goals. He's 22. I think he's a tall lad, but he's good on his feet for a big man. That I would say, but he actually generally is, and his movement's fantastic. He's finishing, that can be coached into him if you like. So I see obviously Callum Wilson's always getting injured. He's just got another hamstring injury, so they had to go and do it. They weren't planning on spending this kind of money, but they had to if they wanted to have a challenge towards that gap. I don't really see anyone else that can do that. I think West Ham starts of the season, Antonio's in different form. Scamacca's a bit of a throw a coin up in the air, see which way it lands kind of thing. You don't really know how that's going to work. So West Ham last couple of years have looked like they were the team that might start pushing towards that with Moisey. But I think that they're well off of it. And I don't really see anyone else.
No, I think the top four will be the top four, and Arsenal will probably finish fifth. And then United will probably end up finishing sixth. Maybe West Ham will make six, or maybe even Newcastle will make six. But I don't see any team really. I mean, Arsenal could challenge for the top four, depending on how things work.
Yeah,
I think that's the only one. So there's probably a top five at the moment, isn't there? Unless United go and buy someone amazing in the before the end of the transfer window.
I think if they're going to get another forward in, then Ronaldo needs to go, doesn't he?
Yeah. I think he needs to go anyway.
That was always the risk, I think, in bringing him back. That extraordinary amount of money. No one's going to pay a transfer fee, and I think he's on something like 400 grand a week or whatever it is.
But I think it just shows how poor the planning at United is at the moment, because Juventus were desperate to get shot of him. They were desperate to get shot of him because of big clubs can't be based around that.
They'd made their money. They'd sold the shirts, but. But again, when things ain't happening on the pitch,
Juventus signed Ronaldo to win the Champions League. They thought that they would win the Champions. They didn't, because it's all about Ronaldo. United signed him to get back in the Champions League,
and they didn't
because again, it's all about Ronaldo. You can't just have a guy who's going to sit at the top of the pitch and just, everyone has to feed him tap-ins, and then he takes all the free kicks and penalties and stuff. Not if you're a big club, you can't do it, can you? You need everyone. The way teams play now, and they didn't play like this, 20 years ago or even earlier. High press, always running. You need to be super fit.
Yeah, I mean, I know they had.
Just won't put it in.
I mean, he's on the bench again today, and I know they had a scrappy win against Southampton. Couldn't match. Yeah, again, I think a motivational thing that they could raise the game for Liverpool, but couldn't raise it for Southampton. And you know what you're going to get with Southampton against a team like that with pace up front. They're going to sit deep. They're going to try and they'll soak up the pressure, and then maybe try and get the odd set piece goal or counter attack or whatever. I've got United finishing seventh. I have to say, I think Newcastle will finish in the top six. Where in that top six, I'm not sure. Depends on maybe. I know they're in for. They want to get another wide player in before the end of the window. They've been looking at João Pedro from Watford, who would be a solid signing. That's quite an exciting sort of like midfield and front line that they've got. And obviously they're quite solid at the back. Dan Burn, Botman, Trippier, Target at left back, improved with Nick Pope in goal. And this is where my logic goes with why I think that they'll be in that top six, because of what they've got, and adding that bit of depth to it now as well. And obviously adding a new striker in gets you the goals and might just take you to that next level. And obviously the midfield with Guimaraes, who I think fantastic player. And we all know what Saint Maximin can do on his day. Terrifies defenses, that's for sure. So yeah, I've gone with that. So obviously you're going to go with Spurs third, maybe sniffing towards the second.
Yeah, I'll say third.
I think us with slightly indifferent season, I think we'll maybe just scraping in fourth. Just keep Arsenal at bay a little bit. Because I do think Arsenal will drift away second half of the season. I'll probably go Arsenal fifth, Newcastle sixth. So that will leave me on to the one more little prediction bit, Is it? Do you think anyone can take the golden boot away from Haaland?
Yeah,
Kane, obviously, Kane. Yeah, you know. But given the sheer amount of chances that City create, it's going to be tight between them two, I think.
Yeah, but I'm going to say Kane can. The only thing, well, one thing in Haaland's favour is he's not going to the World Cup, so he'll get a rest.
Yeah,
all the other top players
won't.
But I mean, I know he scored a hat trick today, and I haven't seen the goals, but
yeah,
I still think that the jury's out a little bit, just in the sense of
he's
how
raw.
successful
He's still a little bit
playing
raw because there's still aspects of his game in terms of finishing that needs improvement. And you'll probably catch up on the goals. You'll see pretty much tap-ins, decent header, and a couple of tap-ins, which is fine. You're paid to put the ball in the back of the net, irrelevant to where you are on the pitch. So I went early on Haaland anyway, because I like him. He's a beast. And in that City team, I think he's right on for it. Yeah, I know. Jesus, I think, will probably be good for somewhere between 15 to 20 goals. I don't mean there's a Chelsea player in with a sniff, to be honest. unless we, I don't know. I've just got this weird. I have this funny. I just got this horrible feeling of things going incredibly wrong. Tuchel going and all that, throwing the toys out the pram because he ain't got players. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, obviously today's result, helped a bit. We're not playing in periods. We play well, but overall we're not playing great. So I don't know. Yeah, Sterling's a great signing. Love that. That's brilliant. Cucurella's good, but. But I'm going to stay on the topic of Chelsea, and this will be our final little topic, and we could not talk about it on the, given the fact that you being a Spurs fan, me being a Chelsea fan. Battle of the Bridge 2.
It was fun, wasn't
it? I mean, aside from the antics between the coaching teams, it was a brilliant game. I don't think there was like an incredible amount of. I mean, if you go back to the Battle of the Bridge the first time around, Willian getting literally kicked up in the air every 2 seconds, and there wasn't.
No,
I don't.
Costa and Dembele and
no, trying to pull his eyes out. Well, I suppose Romero pulling the hair. that kind of sat with the Battle of the Bridge theme. I love that. I know people talk about players losing control, managers losing control, but I just think when you get a bit of that, particularly with this rivalry, and for those that might not be familiar, this goes like way back to like the 1967 Cup final. This is how far back this goes. This ain't just something that's because of for people that might not particularly know their history between the clubs, and this doesn't just go back to Eden Hazard scoring an equaliser to basically give the league to Leicester a few years back. I mean, this goes back away, and there has been there's been these like quite a lot of sort of like cross. Well, I think you're on your 5th ex-Chelsea manager.
Yeah, that's something that I like to think about.
We've spoken about that before on here and all.
Well, that was why I didn't want Conte in the first instance. I just didn't want another Chelsea man.
I bet you're glad you got him now.
No, I am.
Yeah. And obviously there's been a number of players that have crossed that divide down the years as well. Glenn Hoddle. Or it might not be a complete superstar, but Cundy as well has played on both sides of the fence. So yeah. This is it. So it's been a few, but yeah, no, I think it was nice. It was nice to see that kind of level of passion, I call it. I mean, the handshake at the end when the Tuchel, Conte just wanted to disappear, and because of everything, and then Tuchel grabbing his hand and pulling him back and all that.
I think the whole game showed a difference, because obviously we played you 3 times, didn't we, in January, twice in the League Cup semi-final, and then the league game was sandwiched in between the two. And we didn't lay a glove on you at all. We didn't compete. We turned up as if we were going to lose all 3 games. There's Chelsea have a jinx over Tottenham, and they've had it for 30 years, and always on the better of results, even when you weren't the better team. And I thought back in January, oh, Conte will come in and he'll change that. You know, he'll be desperate to beat Chelsea. But he almost gave in, like Tottenham always give in to Chelsea. And I don't think I think he almost gave in because he didn't want to compete and then lose. So by giving in, it was almost a bit easier. You know, even all of his interviews, all of the narrative was, I've only been here a couple of months. They've got much better players than we have, etc., etc.
Different ball game this time around.
Yeah, we were rubbish against you guys in January. So that game was a real test.
But it's been.
I hoped.
I don't mean, obviously, I haven't been able to watch all the Spurs games, but it seems to be a bit of a pattern. Like, you really don't start first half well.
Well, no, we tend to start well for like the first 5 or 10 minutes.
And then it's
really rubbish for the rest.
For the next 25, 30.
Yeah,
so and that was the way the pattern went in that game. But then obviously second half, you really came on it, particularly when Richarlison came on. Actually, I think Richarlison in that game was the difference. I think you might well have got on and got goal, but I think he really turned the tide because
because
like
we didn't have the squad back in January, and this time we had players that we
could
call on.
I mean, Reece James had Sonny in his pocket until Richarlison came on. Richarlison gives you a little bit more aggression, I would say, and he's a bit he's very direct anyway with his play, but I think he gives you a level of aggression that sometimes can be missing out Sonny's game. Sonny's a nice guy, and you don't really see that aggression
on his feet a bit more though. He still loves to roll over and cry like a little girl. I'd like to see him stay on his feet a bit more, but I think it'll be a good signing, definitely.
That'd be a good signing.
Yeah, cool. Let's hope for a few more battles of the bridges. Let's have a battle of the name. It'd
be nice. I need to go. I still haven't been to Spurs Stadium yet, so I need to go, and I want to experience that stadium full tilt. I hear the noise from that main stand behind the goal. That'd be nice. I have to try and get along there for it.
Yeah, anyone who goes really likes it. I think having been there for 2 or 3 years, you almost get a bit used to it.
Yeah.
And then coming down here and then going to the stadium in Wellington, you then realise how good the stadium is, basically. You know, how good the views are, how good the layout is in the back, you know, how relatively easy it is to get a pint, all these silly things.
Makes a difference.
Into the toilet.
It does. And I mean, obviously, you know, we need
the acoustics as well.
Yeah, we need that. I mean, if we're obviously under new owners ourselves and all that, and although they've got deep pockets, I think they recognise that we need. It may not be that we knock the whole of Stamford Bridge down, but they're certainly obviously going to make improvements, because to compete, you know, not just financially, but in terms of how you attract players, the atmosphere and the overall experience that you can generate around the players with a stadium like that, that's massive. Yeah.
The only issue you have is really having to take advantage of it. So if you look at Tottenham Stadium compared to Arsenal, you know, they're only 15 years apart, or less than 15 years apart, but it's they're light years apart. So at the moment, Tottenham have one of, if not the best stadium in the world. But in 10 years' time, there'll be 3 or 4 better stadiums, because stadiums are being built all the time, aren't they?
Yes.
So you really have to
make the most of it now. Make the most of it. Yeah. Yeah. I think for
you look
Spurs,
at Arsenal, you know,
it almost feels like a kind of like a now or never moment with Conte now. I think something has to. I'm not sure that just finishing in the top 4 would be enough for Conte.
It's not enough. It's not enough for Spurs anymore, to be honest.
No, top. I think you need a trophy, even if that's a Carling Cup or FA Cup or whatever, or you know, going all the way in the Champions League or whatever.
Yeah, needs to going back to the stadiums. If you look at Arsenal, you know, they were winning the league before they moved to the Emirates.
Yeah,
and they did not capitalise on having that stadium, and now they've got a big stadium, but it's 15 years later, it's already outdated. It's not it's not a USP for them, is it? It's just they've got a 60,000 stadium.
Yeah, I mean, it cost them 10 years of not having success to pay for it for a start, and not having that investment in the club, in the team.
And Old Trafford is rotting away, isn't it? You know, you think back to the 90s. I mean, it was an immense stadium back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And now it's just, I mean, I remember going up there and just being wowed by it every time I went.
I mean, I know he's not everyone's cup of tea, Gary
away.
Neville, but I mean, I like a lot of things. I think he always, particularly about United, obviously, he always speaks truth. And, you know, yeah. But I mean, what do you do with that? What, I mean, do you try and redevelop it, or do you just knock it down and start again? And if that be the case, where they're going to play, I can't see City letting them play in at the Etihad. Well, they might fill it, which would be a change. All my City fans now.
Well, that's United's planning issue, isn't it? They stopped planning once Fergie went. They just
can they even afford to do it with the amount of money Glazers take out the club for a start? That literally, I know my mate Andy, who's been on the pod before, and he's desperate. Obviously, after the first 2 games of the season, he was desperate to get on the pod and do an episode about United. And obviously, he'd be a bit happier now after a couple of wins. But you know, he's got a lot to say on the Glazers, and we'll definitely get him on and getting him talking about that, because it's a mess. You can't keep taking that kind of money out of the club. And in fact, under the ownership rules as they are now, the Glazers would not be able to actually buy United in the way they did with a leveraged buyout under current ownership rules. So we'll leave that with them for another podcast, because club ownership and all that, you know, we could go on forever about that.
Well, you've got the next one planned, haven't you? The next podcast planned.
Well, yes.
So the
next podcasts, and again, anyone that watches this back or is watching in the YouTube chat now, we're going to be doing our all-time Premier League 11. I've changed my mind so many times, and I'll probably change it again several times before we get to actually sit down and do it. So that's what we're going to plan and we're going to do next. It'll be Premier League all-time 11s. I mean, if you think back, this is another reason why I want to do that is obviously it's the 30-year anniversary of the Premier League. So why not? And it's an incredible amount of great players to pick from, and every time that I pick and I sit on it, and then I think, oh, but what about him? And then what about him? And then but you can't play them all. And then do I want to pick my team because it functions as a team, or am I just picking because it's names? You know, and then the tactics side of my head's like, no, but let's pick a team that functions on an actual level. If you put them on a pitch, they would function as a team. And that's the line I went down with my picks. Won't say them now. I'll save that for it. And
the next one.
That'll be it. Yeah.
My midfield sorted.
I'll ask you this. I'm not going to ask you for names. Cool. How many Spurs players in it?
Guaranteed to be in it at the moment? No.
Yeah.
But probably one will sneak in.
Got a feeling I might know. I don't know, actually. I don't know. There could be. I mean, Ginola. Oh. But
I'll save it for the next episode.
Yeah. That's just what I'm saying. Again, there we go. Another bloody name going in my head.
Actually, maybe two. I've changed my mind. Two will probably sneak in.
Right. So for people that are listening on the on Spotify, please don't forget to get on all the social links. So that if you go on the Spotify bio, obviously on the page for that, you've got the link tree there, which links you to everything. And the link tree is on everything that we've got. And yet again, that gets you to every aspect of how you interact with the podcast. So it's got all the audio episodes there, and whichever way you want to listen to them. You've got obviously the links to the YouTube, the website, the TikTok, the Instagram, the emails there as well. So, you know, be old fashioned. Don't think you just have to message us through social media apps. You can message us through the old fashioned way, a bit like pen and paper, and actually send an email. So don't forget you can do that. And to everyone, like I say, listening on those audio services, thank you very much for joining us on episode 1 of season 3. I can't believe that I'm on the 3rd season of this already.
No, well done.
I know, it's getting there, isn't it? Also, we may be having. I've got a friend of mine whose two brothers do another podcast. Actually, Paul, I'm going to recommend this podcast to you because I think you'll like it as well. Albeit they're Arsenal fans, don't hold that against them because they're very funny guys. They do a mixture of sports, but predominantly football. It's called The Casual Fan. So it's TCF. I'm going to say I'll send Paul a link to it anyway. Worth checking out. They're funny guys, and they give Arsenal a bit of stick and slag them off as well. So they're not just completely, Arsenal. They do have a pop and have a laugh at themselves, which is good. So I'll give them a little shout out there. So because they're good guys, and I'm going to go on their show. They're going to come on mine here. So yeah, it's good. So thank you for everyone for joining us on Talk Football Podcast, and we're going to say goodbye to all of our audio listeners there, and we'll see you on the next episode. So that's goodbye from me, your host Hodgie, and goodbye from
me. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for jumping on the pod with me on this new season. So hopefully we'll get pulled back in for as long as we can arrange the times, we'll get pulled back in for the all-time Premier League 11, because I'll be fascinated to see any differences between all of our squads, and hopefully Adam, one of the regular hosts on here as well, will join us for that as well, and we shall see you there for that one. Thank you very much. See you soon. And there we go. So that's goodbye to all of our. We're still live on YouTube. So anyone that's there on YouTube, we're still here for you. Hello. Just as we finish off and say goodbye. But that's the audio section done. That makes it a little bit easier for me on the editing to say goodbye like that on there, because it saves me having to cut all this out. But no, I enjoyed that. That was good. That was a good pod. Good to have Paul back on.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't get to see his face that often, being out in New Zealand. So, and obviously, Paul's planning on coming over around about May next year, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to come back over for the Tottenham Open Top Bus Parade.
Well, you never know. You never know. It's a funny old game. As a former Chelsea and Spurs striker Tottenham used to say.
Yeah. So hoping to come back.
Having said that, and because he ain't that far off getting the Wolves out, is he, old Harry?
No, he'll do it this season, I'm sure.
Yeah, how many behind is he now?
16.
16. So, well, it's done, isn't it? And barring any injuries or whatever, and I don't wish that on him because I like Kane, and we need a fully fit Kane if we've got any chance of winning the World Cup. So barring any of that, we we need him. We need him fit. So right. So to anyone that's here on YouTube watching this, YouTube's there in front of me, camera's here in front of me, Paul's here. Thank you for joining us on this live broadcast pod. And if you're watching this back, like I said to all the audio listeners there, don't forget to get in contact with the show, and then we look forward to more of these. I quite like doing these live ones. It's quite nice. Although we haven't had anyone pop in the chat today, but that's my fault because I put the wrong times out. So if people have got pinged and they come on to see, oh, where's the pod, and they maybe thought it had gone. So apologies. But at least you get to watch it back because I'll leave it up on the live screen. Yeah, there we go. Right, YouTube. Good night, goodbye. See you on the next one. And I'm gonna have a little chat with Paul before he goes because I've got to let him. He's got the poor fella's got a. So what's the time now over there? But approaching 7:30. Yeah. There we go. We got to let him sort himself out and go into the gym, right? Innit?
That's the plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I need